What's your darkest family secret? I once borrowed my grandfather's video camera for a trip. He told me he put a fresh tape in the camera for me and gave me a backup tape as well. I was about 12 years old at the time and really into filming things because I wanted to become a director. When I got back from the trip, I rewound the tape to review my footage. What I saw was dim lighting in a room I didn't recognize. There were two people, one lying down and another person beside them, moving her head up and down. Oh my God, my grandparents had made a porno and my grandmother was blowing on my grandfather. I told my dad what I'd seen. We never spoke about it again, and my grandparents have no idea that I know. My grandfather took that secret to the grave with him 3 years ago, and now I have to live with that traumatic memory for decades to come. Reply: I'm really sorry that you had to see your grandparents in this state, but that's where babies come from, grandma and papa bobbing. My grandfather was a missing person, and my dad spent years trying to find him. Grandma dropped the bomb that she's known where he is and has kept in contact for the last 20 years, but told him no one wants anything to do with him. Then she recovered, and no one's talked to her since. Reply: did your family get in contact with your grandfather? Editor's reply: nope, she wouldn't tell us how to find him / where, just told everyone she knows. My mom gave birth on the floor of her apartment. I used to think it was because it happened so fast. That's what she always said. I recently learned it was because she was in denial about being pregnant and never got any prenatal care. Denied it right up until the baby was literally coming out of her. My dad learned as an adult that his father, who he'd known as his dad his entire life, was not his biological father. But that's not the crazy part. After my grandmother died, my dad asked me to see if I could find anything out about his biological father online. I popped a few details into Ancestry and very quickly found a marriage certificate showing a marriage that happened before my grandfather. Then I found another, then another. My grandmother had been married not once before, but 3 times before she eventually married my grandfather. And she kept them all secret. We don't even think my grandfather knew about the first 2. This was all in the 40s, spanning several states, and we weren't able to find divorce paperwork for all of them, so it's quite possible she was legally married to several people. We found out my grandpa was gay after he passed away last year. There was tons of, evidence. I guess my sister knew, and he asked her to keep it a secret from us. He was married to my grandma for 62 years. She passed a month before he did, and nobody ever knew. My grandfather owned a taxi business that was a money laundering front and was used to move bodies for the mob back in the 70s and 80s. There's much more that I won't include. Only comfortable saying this because it's been over with for a while now, and my grandfather did his time unrelated to the taxi business and has been gone for a number of years. My dad accidentally or unintentionally fathered dozens to hundreds of surrogate children. He was deployed overseas in the USAF when his wife at the time just went nuts and left my 2 older brothers by themselves and abandoned them. She was not paying bills, and my dad had to make up extra money to survive, and as luck has it, his neighbor at the time was a nurse at a fertility clinic. He only donated for long enough to make ends meet, but unknown to him, the profile of him being a USAF captain, a Mensa member with several college degrees and good-looking, led a lot of couples to choose his samples. So far, only one of my surrogate siblings has reached out, but my father passed away over a decade ago. My piece of shit uncle actually sent my mom a cease and desist letter using his own law firm's letterhead to never speak of this to my grandma, because it deeply upset her to learn her son donated to a sperm bank and he bore children outside of wedlock. She's now a big part of our family, and I'm actually going to meet her for the first time tomorrow. Honestly, I hope to someday meet more of my surrogate brothers and sisters. A lot of them may never know or even care, but I think it's kind of crazy and cool. A family member whose death would create a chain reaction of issues with estate settlement has been deceased since before Thanksgiving. Only myself and the executor of the estate know, and we're having to do an insane amount of damage control to make sure no one steals anything or creates issues before probate begins. I had an uncle who moved far away and worked in a boiler room at a huge casino decades ago. He was always sketchy, and he had way more money than a simple boiler room employee should have had. There were rumors that the boiler room was really useful for the mob, since boilers can double as incinerators for certain purposes. Hence the money. Many unanswered questions there. Reply: guess it's kind of obvious that your uncle got paid to look the other way while the mob used the boiler room to cook their pizzas. My great-grandfather shot and killed a man in his grocery store back in the 30s over a poker game. He ran a speakeasy out of the back of his store and lost almost $2,000. So, as the guy was walking out the front door after the store closed, he shot him and got away with it by telling the police the man robbed him. It wasn't until he was on his deathbed that he told my grandfather what had actually happened. This was in Ohio. No one knows where my uncle came from. So my grandfather was a very high-ranking policeman, but also a raging asshole. My Nana unfortunately had a stillborn baby, and my very Catholic grandfather was a complete jerk about her grief. He refused to acknowledge the baby as having any right to be buried in the family cemetery since it wasn't baptized. Nana suffered enormously in her grief, and Granddad was sick of it. So one day he comes home with a newborn, told Nana they had adopted him, and she could stop crying now. And that was my uncle. He came with zero paperwork. No birth certificate, no adoption papers, nothing. Our best guess is that he was the baby of an incarcerated woman. But since both grandparents have passed away now, we really don't know for sure. I personally don't care about the legacy of an angry and abusive man, but the rest of the family keeps it under tight wraps so that his service history with the police won't be tarnished over the fact that we're pretty sure he stole a baby. My great-uncle was born after his sister was raped by their father. The family claimed she had just been promiscuous and mentally unstable. They locked her in the attic. After my great-uncle died, my mother and I went to the multi-generational family house to clean it out. The attic door, where the sister/mother had been kept until she eventually passed away, had a lock on the outside. There weren't any creepy claw marks or anything like that, but the situation was just heartbreaking. My mom removed the lock and declared to the house that she would never be locked away again. Reply: that's terrible. How can people blame victims so easily? If they were going to lock up anyone, it should have been her awful father. My cousin might actually be my uncle. His mother had intercourse with my grandfather shortly before she found out she was pregnant. There hasn't been a paternity test, but my cousin found out about it, and it really messed him up emotionally. Edit. For clarity, the mom married into the family. So when they had sex, it was between a father-in-law and his daughter-in-law. Reply: what the fuck? No one in my family can give me an honest answer about how many siblings I have. Reply: same. My father is 72 and I'm in my early 20s. He has about 8 kids that I'm aware of. The youngest is 15 and the oldest is 49. My brother from my mother's side recently told me he ran into my sister from my father's side. I had no idea who she was. Most of the family members I asked just say they've lost count. I learned my disabled great-aunt was raped multiple times while she was in high school, including by a teacher, and it resulted in at least 3 pregnancies that she was forced to carry to term and give up for adoption, and then was shamed for it. I found out because I did 23andMe and discovered cousins my dad couldn't explain, so there was a very awful phone call to understand why. Reply: disabled women are at the highest risk for sexual assault. I am so sorry. My grandma has been having an affair with a family friend's husband for 28 years. My father won the lottery, and we've been pretending to be poor so our family doesn't try to ask us for money. Reply: safest bet. Family will turn on you at even the chance of running someone else into the ground for money. Your father is a clever man. My brother shot himself in the leg to get out of Iraq and tried to blame it on an enemy attack. I learned about this the day I arrived in Afghanistan for my year-long tour. All I heard was that he was shot. I found out later it was a self-inflicted wound, and he was put on suicide watch and was kicked out with a less than honorable discharge. He's never actually told anyone this. I just heard it through the National Guard, which is kind of like a gossipy small town. I actually don't hold it against him. War sucked. He's absolutely ruined his life since then by becoming an alcoholic and sitting the world out. Just sad all around. Also, my mom and her sister married the same man, so all my siblings are also cousins with each other. Found out last year that I am a direct descendant of Thomas Rood. He was the first person to be executed for incest in the U.S. He raped his daughter Sarah, and it came to light when she gave birth to a son named George. My family line is descended from George. My grandfather is a pedophile who assaulted all of us, except my brother as far as I know. It's not necessarily that we can't tell people. It's more that people don't believe us. We've mentioned it to people both inside and outside of the family, and it's the classic, oh, he would never, or if they realize we're serious. So I'm sure it wasn't that bad. Believe your children, folks, and always assume it actually is that bad. I've told this story, but it's still pretty fucking dark. My great-grandmother's father was a family annihilator and murdered her mom and all 4 of her siblings when she was very young, 5 or 6. While he was killing everyone else, she hid under the porch. Apparently, he called her name, looking for her for hours before finally giving up and committing suicide. She was the only survivor. I didn't find this out until after she had passed away when I was in my teens. My great-grandfather was well known in town 80 years ago for trying to publicly kill himself a bunch of times before finally succeeding. I didn't know until I was 20 and found his obituary. I'm named after him, and as a kid, my pediatrician, who was really old, always asked about my mental health and encouraged me to talk to a therapist about any dark thoughts I might have. I think the doctor remembered my great-grandfather's story and wanted to make sure I didn't go that way. My great-grandfather would smuggle in alcohol from Canada during Prohibition. It was also illegal for Native Americans to drink in local bars. But he would invite them in and claim they weren't Native Americans, but were from Mexico, so they could drink with him. He also had a brother who ran away and joined the circus and eventually became a Hollywood prop man. My dad used to take me to an old veterans bar when I was a kid. Some of the other members would bring their kids/grandkids as well, and I would play with one of them in particular because my dad always talked to his mom. One day my dad got pretty hammered there and pulled me to the side. He leaned in and pointed to the kid. He said to me that the other kid was my brother. I asked what he meant, and he seemed to realize he shouldn't have said anything and just said he was. This was 20-something odd years ago. I'm pretty sure my mom knows my dad cheated, but not the extent of having another kid. I also don't think he remembers telling me. I know nothing about that kid and couldn't even recall his name. My parents are also currently the happiest I've ever seen them recently, and I don't want to bring anything up to stop that because they had some rough years. So for the time being, the only other person that knows is my wife and Reddit. I have an uncle literally nobody talks about. I have no idea if he's even still alive. He had intercourse with a woman. She told him she had AIDS. He murdered her. Now, that's what he claims. The woman didn't have AIDS, and he didn't contract it. I didn't even know about him until I was doing a family tree thing online. I asked my grandparents about it, and they told me to never ever speak of him again. I brought it up with my dad a few years later. He said, "He's not your real uncle. Don't ask about it again," in the most chilling way I've ever heard. I had a great-great-aunt that was a widow 3 separate times. Everyone said it was super sad and unfortunate, and that she stopped marrying in fear that it would happen again. Well, when she died, one of our family members looked more into the deaths of her husbands. They found it strange that all of them died from natural causes despite them being too young to have them. It's not like natural causes can't happen at 30 to 40. But it's strange that it was 3 separate times. The more they investigated, the more they started to realize that all of these deaths weren't accidental. I can't remember how they figured it out, but we learned that she had poisoned all of them and nobody knew. She had played innocent the entire time, and she was never looked into because nobody thought the deaths were homicide. So now everyone knows her and my family as a Black Widow, and it's easily the darkest secret we have. We have another secret, but it's less dark and more crazy, and I can't share it, LOL. My family used to be pretty prestigious. They only married within certain noble families. Unfortunately, that led to a lot of poor health in the descendants, and eventually my great-grandfather and grandfather realized we were too sickly and ugly. So for the future of the family, he started adopting lots of children who looked healthy and good-looking, passing them off as the children of his wives and mistresses. They would straight up go to parents and ask for their kids, and a lot of the time the parents handed them over because they thought the children could be provided a better life. He also adopted the kids of people who tried to kill him. Thought it was funny that the kids of his enemy would grow up loving him. My dad told me this when I asked why nobody wanted to get genetic testing to narrow down what caused the family blindness. Turns out they're all worried the tests would prove they aren't related to me, when it's obvious due to my health issues my lineage is without question. So I got the ugly, inbred, blue blood genes. I just learned this in December. During World War II, my great-grandfather, who died before I was born, likely helped Nazis land successfully in Florida. He was put on trial for it, but was never convicted because they didn't have enough evidence. Apparently, my whole family is 100% sure he did it. He sent my grandpa, his son, to Germany as a teen to attend a military school there, no doubt hoping that my grandpa would come back with different beliefs. He even met Hitler once while he was in training there. He came back to the US after only a few months because he didn't like it. My grandpa fought in World War II on the US side and was also put on trial for being a potential spy due to his time in the German training camp, but thankfully wasn't convicted because he was innocent. Kind of a wild thing to know that if he had been wrongly convicted, I wouldn't exist. My dad hit someone walking on the side of the road during a snowstorm and didn't kill them, but I think injured them pretty significantly. I don't know the details, but he made payments to this woman monthly for a long time. He is dead now, and I'm no contact with his wife. My husband and I could never find anything about an arrest or court case, so I'm assuming it was blackmail because my dad wasn't a nice enough person to do it out of guilt. My mother was engaged to someone else before she married my dad. Her parents even got her silver engraved with his last initials. Then she married my dad. I always wondered why our family silver had a V on it. She took that secret to her grave. We found an engagement notice and some photos, but never learned anything else about him. My mom's dad died when she was a young teenager in a workplace accident when he fell into a press. She was the one who identified his remains, as her mother couldn't be found. She was an only child, and his death fractured the family, and she basically raised herself from then on. About 40 years later, I accompanied her back to say goodbye to her estranged uncle who was on his deathbed. He told her that him and her father were spies for the government, and he had been killed in the line of duty, and they'd staged the death. They'd had her identify the body because her mother would have asked too many questions. He may have been senile, but he did seem lucid, and my mom said it would explain a lot of other things. When I was 13, I came home drunk and went straight to my mom's journal for a reason that eludes me to this day, and I read that she wished my dad would cheat on her, so she had a reason to leave. I lived with that for 8 years when finally my sister told me, when drunk, that she had caught our dad cheating on our mom when I was around 14, but she never told our mom or anyone, only confronted our dad to stop the affair as she knew our mom would take us away from him. I then told her about the diary. We have never really spoken about it since. It's been another 8 years. I had to put my dog to sleep in 2023 because she was lethargic and dehydrated with vomiting and diarrhea and lost the use of her back legs. I assumed, paired with her CCD, that it was time for her to go. 3 months later, I received a recall notice informing me that a batch of her prescription dog food was formulated incorrectly, causing the exact symptoms, minus the CCD. She experienced the night before I had her euthanized. I threw the notice away and never told anyone about it. My 2 older brothers are adopted. Their bio mom was my dad's sister. It was common knowledge that their mom was murdered while being a high-paid escort. I had no idea. They never knew this their entire life. One time my brother said something about wondering where his mom was because she left when he was a kid, and I was like, holy moly, that's not what happened. My brothers were in their 40s when they finally found out.